This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about, we talked yesterday about Stacey Abrams, and that was kind of like a breaking story, I guess, more along the lines when I first started talking about it. So there's been coverage of it and people basically trying to twist themselves into a pretzel to defend what she said. And then also I found out today that Planned Parenthood actually still edited their website about fetal heart development. So we're talking about that today. Also, there was a bit of a snippet of a report that came out about illegal immigration. And I just thought it was a good contrast to about the Martha Vineyard story that you guys should just be made aware of. So we're going to touch on that today. And also, there's this really weird conflation going on with the left is really obsessed with trying to conflate a miscarriage, which is a spontaneous abortion. Technically, that is what it's called, and versus like an induced abortion. I've had people try to tell me the numbers that we quote when we talk about abortion isn't just induced abortion. It's also miscarriages. No, that's not true. There's been like 1 million induced abortions within like the past year or so. But there's a story about Chrissy Teigen, and a lot of people have talked about it, and I haven't touched on it yet. But about 2 years ago, she had a miscarriage, suffered a miscarriage. She put her pictures on Instagram, which people had all kinds of comments about it. And I don't think I said anything about it at the time. But she suffered the loss of her baby. She named him Jack, and it was devastating, as it is always normally devastating for women when they have miscarriages. But now, a couple weeks ago, or a week or two ago, John Legend conflated it with abortion, and now Chrissy Teigen is saying that her husband, John Legend, told her that she had an abortion, and she's embarrassed because she didn't process that she had an abortion. So now she's telling people she had an abortion, and it kind of, how she described on Instagram, it sounds like she bore the child, and she talked about how they couldn't give him, they just kept giving him blood and giving blood, trying to save his life, etc. It's not really the same as what most people are up in arms talking about. But it is this really weird conflation they're doing because they need to talk about fringe stuff, but in order to justify abortion. However, I think it's so weird that there's this need to feel involved, like they're a part of the abortion thing, that they want to be like, oh, I had one too. And there's a video that I want to share that I saw on TikTok of this black man in front of a Planned Parenthood, just giving the people there, the protesters, the business. Because he says something I think is so poignant. It's like 3 minutes long, but it's really worth watching. So I'm going to play it. So those are the kind of things that we're going to go over today. But before we jump into it, I encourage you go to blackteennews.com, check out different content that I have on the website, different articles. Every time I see someone talk about Whitmer on, well, I guess not every time, but I'm reposting a lot of my stuff, so people will read it and be like, she's not a good person, this proposal, etc. I would like this stuff to have more national attention, because we got some pretty crazy stuff going on in my state, and it is do or die. It is like do or die. So please make sure that you guys are liking and sharing different things that are on the website, especially as I come out with different videos and different stuff that I share, but different things that I make on Black Teen News, especially if I take the time to make a standalone video. Please share it. Go to blackteennews.com. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com. I do appreciate people who have given and tend to do so, or have done in the past, but it does cost to stream, it costs to travel, it costs to use the software that I use. It just costs to run the website, nothing in life is free, no matter how many times the libs say it. We know that there are costs associated with stuff. So if you like what I do ask that you consider helping, at least with the overhead with Black Teen News. I would very much appreciate it. And you can do that at blackteennews.com/donate. Also check out different merch on the store, like a mother victim you're looking for. You are not that special. Different gendered stuff, XX Club lifetime membership, Roe KC aborted, and let's not forget about the pumpkin spice. But I haven't mentioned one of my books in a while, so I'll go ahead and mention that if you do not know, I am an author. I have finished my abortion book, FYI. I don't want to tell you the title till it's up on sale, basically, but it's a good title. And I will tell you when that launches and everything. But most of the books that I have one book that's published right now that is a nonfiction book, The Slay Your Fear: How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear, and that's a faith book. Which is funny. My sister we were at an event, and there was someone she was obviously a lib, and she wanted to write a story, and it had something to do with her family history, but she didn't want to touch on it because it was racial, and she was a white woman, and she didn't know how to feel, and so she kept kind of going down this rabbit hole. So my sister actually pitched her this book, and so she actually bought it, and I signed it for her. So I don't know how she felt when it got to the obviously kind of more political stuff, but I hope it blessed her and touched her life, and she's taking a red pill. But you guys can check out that stuff. I also write historical fiction fantasy books. If you imagine like Harriet Tubman, but like X-Men powers, that's what you get when you get like The Color of God's Eyes and the sequel to Song of the Devil's Lips. And I also have lots of other books, but some people in the audience have bought Super Kid for their family, for their grandkids. Some people have just read it themselves and said they really enjoyed it. It's got a lot of great values in the book, not that woke stuff. It's not a political book, but it's got a lot of great values in it. So if you go to blackteennews.com, the merchandise button, there is a banner that'll take you to my book website, but otherwise just search me on Amazon, search my name, Christina Barr, and my book website is ninjadoespublishing.com, but you can find that all if you go to the merchandise part of blackteennews.com. Also want to thank Bride of Mission Pack. I'm in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, nobody cares. They just like to uplift conservative voices, and I do really appreciate the pack and what they do in the state and how we work together. I've shared some videos that we put out on my page on Facebook, so please be sure to share the 10 reasons not to vote for Danny Nessel, 10 reasons not to vote for Gretchen Whitmer. There will be one about Jocelyn Benson coming out soon, so watch all those things and make sure that you share. And any stuff we put out about Prop 3, please make sure that you share. Okie dokie. You guys know that I like to start off with some kind of meme, and I wanted to share this yesterday. I didn't quite get the reference, and so it looked funny to me, but I didn't understand the reference. So now I understand the reference. So the other day there was a news report about babies and how when mothers they'll eat something and they're taking like 3D images of the baby, and then they can see the kind of expressions they're making. So they wanted to gauge like if they react to certain taste and stuff. So they took a picture of a baby after she had some carrots and the baby was smiling. And then they took some pictures of the baby after the mother had some kale and it was making a face. And so they were all like, oh, it's cute, blah, blah, blah. So it's funny that I think the baby was like maybe 8 months or something like that from the news report. But that kind of baby, Stacey Abrams, is like if a mother decides to kill it, then that's the mother's business. So really radical stuff. It's amazing how it's a beautiful, wonderful thing when you want the baby, and when the woman wants to kill it, it's like no longer human or whatever. But this was a meme that Grand Old Memes put out with the baby. They're smiling, and then Stacey Abrams and then making the frown face after, I guess, being exposed to Abrams. So I thought, again, I didn't understand the reference when I first saw it yesterday, but now that I see it today and understand the reference, I can explain it. It's a good meme. It's a good meme. So made me smile. But since we're on the subject, I will remind you guys, since it's a short snippet, I'll replay the snippet from Abrams yesterday talking about the fetal heart.
There is no such thing as a heartbeat at 6 weeks. It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body away from her.
Yeah, so of course that is a conspiracy theory to add the anti-science bit of it with the conspiracy that it's just all to control the women, to control the women. You know, it's funny if they are saying that the heartbeat is just the sound of the valves open and closing, like that. Even if she's not against abortion, even if you went by that metric, but the heart beating is just like it contracting the heart, even though it is very basic at 5 6 weeks, it's still functioning. The sonogram is picking up, it does an image by the, well, sonogram is actually the image of the baby, like what they produce and make. The ultrasound is a machine, and they do it by sound. It's not picking it, meant to just be picking up electrical signals. It's just doing it all by the sound. So it is making a sound. It is making a real sound. It's not nonsense. As I said yesterday, men in the back room with mustaches saying, hey, we got to get them broads to not kill their babies. It's so dastardly. That's not what is happening. So people have come to her aid and like, no, she's right, because this doctor here said this, and this doctor had said this, and NPR said this. And like Twitter, when something will trend and they'll have an explanation, they had like this huge paragraph trying to cover up Stacey Abrams' comment, but there's nothing they can do to save her campaign. Kemp is like way ahead of her, and she just keeps saying crazier stuff. She's not going to appeal to the middle. It's still a red state. They had some flukes, but she's going to lose. I'm glad she's going to lose. And she hasn't been running a great campaign from the moment she took that photo with the kids behind her wearing masks and her not wearing mask. And she just keeps it going. She just keeps it going. But something that I did find out this morning, and apparently, I think Live Site or Live Action, one of those news sites, reported on this a little bit a while ago. But sometime after July, Planned Parenthood changed, self-edited their website for what they would describe as heartbeats, what goes on during that time. So I have the screenshots, and it's, and the first one, it says a very basic beating heart and a circulatory system develop at 5 to 6 weeks. So that's what it said before. Now it's like, oh, it sounds like a heartbeat on an ultrasound. But it's not a fully formed heart. It's in the earliest stage of the heart developing. Yeah, when we're babies, we are all in the early stages of development. That's true. It is a more basic heart at 5 to 6 weeks, but a heart nonetheless doing circulatory things. So trying to, I don't know, psych people out as if it's not a real heart yet. I think that's dumb anyway. Like, the only difference between that baby at 6 weeks and that baby at 9 months is time. Same person. There's not a magical beam of light that's like, you are a person now. That doesn't happen. It's all time is the only difference. Just the time to develop. So I think that sort of thinking is really dumb, but people, even some really smart people, can convince themselves of some really dumb things to justify things that are pretty grotesque and pretty egregious. But Planned Parenthood obviously thought it was necessary to go in and self-edit their website. So people are saying that they changed it for Abrams. I think it's kind of more likely that she is going by what other people are saying, and they changed it earlier. But sometime after July, I think the end of the July, they went ahead and they changed this. And I think people reported this back in maybe like sometime in August. So I don't think they're covering her tracks, but that's just the way that people are going. And Abrams isn't the first person to say it's not a real heartbeat or whatever. I mean, I hate to throw Oz under the bus right now, since we're trying to get him over the finish line because he's against a crazy person. But he said something along those lines when he was talking to the Breakfast Club. That was one of the things that people were like, hey, we're not sure about this guy, how pro-life he is, because he's like mocking the fetal heartbeat bills and stuff. But yeah, it can beat pretty early. And it's not like the complex four-chambered system it is or whatever. It's been a long time since I had my anatomy test on the heart, which I had to study a crap ton for, man, in high school. But it's basic true, but it is still a heart, and it'll get more complicated. But you can look at, which I've seen, the fetal heartbeat, the how the chambers and stuff are very early on, but it's still a heart and it's still working. And to pretend like it just sounds like a heartbeat, but it's not really a heartbeat. It's all an illusion by the men in the back room with the mustaches. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. But you have people all from the woodwork, NPR and Washington Post, trying to, I don't know, juggle the truth. But it's just science denial. But it's interesting as they try to say, no, a heartbeat is this, and we know that Planned Parenthood also stealth edited their website as far as ectopic pregnancies, and you see Warren and Gretchen Whitmer and Kamala Harris. They're going after pregnancy crisis centers. They're saying, this kind of stuff. It's misinformation. The misinformation, disinformation. I'm a little concerned that as people continuously try to share more pro-life, just basic information, that people are going to try to shut it down and say that's false, and then start flagging stuff everywhere and start taking stuff down, and try to silence people that way. That's where I'm concerned, where some of this is going, as especially as they keep mentioning stuff. You had Keith Ellison, who did a consumer report like alert about pregnancy crisis centers. They keep saying they're giving false information and they lure these people in. And I'm like, they service these desperate women who are so desperate to the point where they think that their best opportunity or shot is to kill another person. And then they convince them not to do it. That's a good thing. Like yesterday we talked about Hillary Clinton. Now she's like, it shouldn't be harder to get an abortion than an AR-15. Like, why? You have a right to a firearm. You don't have a right to kill another person. It should be very hard to kill another person. The government certainly shouldn't sponsor it and pay for it in some circumstances. Like, answer me why you think it should be easier to get an abortion than an AR-15. If America had an AR-15 problem, I think we know about it, because it's a very popular gun. It's a very popular gun. It is tragic when someone decides to kill another person. But I think Ben Shapiro pointed out that was it maybe 2019, there were 364 deaths with long guns, and there was like 1 million deaths by abortion that year. You want to talk about dangers to America? It's the dangers in the womb. The dangers in the womb. But let's move on. Talking about Democrat ignorance. We are all aware of the Martha Vineyard stunt that DeSantis pulled. He had a great monologue the other day. It was kind of long, so I didn't post it, but it was so good. About Biden and the border crisis and their criticism of him and the reality of what's happening on the ground. And they want to say, like, he's so mean, Abbott's so mean. But we pointed out, and other people point out, that Biden has been dropping them off everywhere. Like, middle of the night, plane rides, you drop them off to do whatever. And Republicans had to like sue Biden, or I don't know if they sued him, but they probably didn't sue him, but they complained about him transporting illegals so they could get abortions. I mean, we're just doing wild things over here. While the border crisis is just kind of exploding. So Kamala Harris did have a comment about the Martha Vineyard stunt, which, by the way, they were there for like 48 hours, and then they like released them to like a military base or something. And by the way, there were people who donated money for them to take care of the illegal immigrants, and that money goes into like the Martha Vineyard such and such fund. It didn't go to end up helping them. They sent them off within 48 hours. So if you gave money to them, to rich people, to super rich people, so they could go ahead and, I don't know, plan their next ball or something, that's just crazy to me. But Hey, that's what they do. People complain about people who give money to church voluntarily, and they go ahead and give money to Martha's Vineyard stuff so they can kick illegal immigrants off in 48 hours. But here's something that Kamala Harris said about that whole encounter.
Doing it for the sake of a headline, what we're seeing with these governors is irresponsible, and it's inhumane. It's inhumane.
Oh, it's so inhumane. So that's what she said. That's what a lot of people were saying. But I just would like to remind people that they don't have this border crisis under control, and the more people who come, the more inhumane that they are, and it's inhumane how people get here anyway, through the coyotes and the sort of sexual assault and abuse that can happen to women, to children through these journeys. They're very dangerous. They've had to get people who've drowned in the Rio Grande. There's people who've fallen off the wall and died scaling like Trump's wall. People have fallen off of it and died. Like, if you're really a refugee, you can go to the point of entry and you can have your case made. But if you're just doing it for economics and you're just trying to get to America, which I don't begrudge you for trying to get to America. I will say it's the greatest place on earth. I know the liberals don't believe that, but they think everyone should come in. But they should be waving off like, go away. It's terrible here. Go back to Venezuela. If it's so terrible. But that's not what they do. They're like, everyone welcome here. It's great. Except when we hate it. But here's a little snippet of a report. Just to remind you that Biden doesn't have any control.
With Border Patrol and local shelters over capacity, immigration officials here have released nearly 1,300 migrants onto the street in the past 2 weeks. We witnessed roughly 100 being dropped off by the city at a nearby hotel.
Oh. On the streets, huh? Okay. That's what the Biden administration is doing. Just, they don't have the room. And like I know in Arizona and other places, there were people who were dropping off at hotels and stuff. There's just not the space. There's just not the resources, especially a lot of places they're dropping off. Now, Martha's Vineyard might not have had the resources at the time, but they have the capital to make that happen. And like, well, we don't have the space. Like, between, what do you mean you don't have the space? You can't like pack some people up in some of the rooms, in the mini rooms in the houses? You can't do that? I think you can. But you don't want to. I think you don't want to. Talk is cheap. Here's another video that Fox News did with someone who's a business owner talking about how difficult it is right now.
It just feels like we're completely overrun and we've lost control of everything. At least I know that here you're helpless. You're helpless. And those people that say that we don't have a problem, you come live in Eagle Pass for a few weeks and you'll see it. And you'll understand how awful and insecure it feels. I've been a member of the community for over 50 years. I'm a second generation owner to a barbecue business in town that it's called the Wagon Wheel. We are off the main highway. I also have a property as well that's been in the family for over 26 years. And I've just, not only has my business been broken into and ransacked, it's just the insecurity now. You know, you don't feel safe at home anymore. I worked alongside my father for 19 years. One break-in 25 years. From February to now, I've had 5. I don't know how to secure my building enough to keep these people away.
Biden doesn't care, though. Won't even go to the border. They keep trying to deny that it's a crisis. They definitely don't want to fix it. And if you confront them, they'll be like, there's not really a border crisis. It's all in control. We believe in the law. We're enforcing the law. We've deported record numbers. Yeah, and you have record numbers coming, so you should be deporting record numbers. But it's still not enough, sir. Especially when you keep signaling that people can come and get a free pass to be in America. So I know I've seen some people like it's really mean what DeSantis and all of them are doing. Maybe I'm mean. I think it's a little funny. I just a taste of their own medicine. Like I said, it's an Alency tactic. They use that kind of stuff on the right. It's rule number, I think it was 4. Like, make them live by their own rules. So their example is like, if they say they respond to every letter, then overwhelm them with like 30,000, so they can't possibly, fulfill their values. Now, this should have been simple enough. Send some people to Martha's Vineyard and people who believe in sanctuary, etc., and then they can take care of 50 people. But of course, they didn't really want to, so they're no longer there, and they didn't intend for them to be there. But at least they raised some funds. At least they got a little bit more in their pockets for their balls or whatever the heck they're going to spend it on. I don't know. Okay, before I get to the Chrissy Teigen story, there was this video that's going around from Gays Against Groomers in California, a testimony that's really good. So I want to play that before moving on.
Good evening. My name is Mario Presents, and I'm here as a representative from Gays Against Groomers Coalition with over 250,000 followers across social media, and as the uncle of 2 students in your district. It has come to our attention that the district intends to teach transgenderism to children under the age of 10 without parental consent. If I were to teach your child about my sexuality without your consent or involvement, I'd be arrested. But when the school district does it, it's education. Districts are teaching transgenderism when they should be teaching science, math, and language. Instead, teachers are hiding student pronouns from their parents under the guise of gender affirmation. Can you imagine the uproar if schools were evangelizing or baptizing children without parental consent? Isn't that sort of what you're doing? You don't tuck these children in at night. You don't teach them to stand up to bullies. You don't pay their medical bills. And you certainly don't hold their hands in the hospital. These parents do. Simple truths based in science need to be upheld for our society to flourish. The gross indoctrination we're seeing is creating a lifetime of medication and hormones because you can't simply pause puberty. Men cannot become women, and sex chromosomes are encoded into the fabric of our DNA. Simply affirming a teenager's gender is akin to affirming anorexia. Both are body dysmorphic disorders, yet we don't teach the starving teenagers how to binge and purge or affirm that they are indeed overweight. However, school districts, including yours, seem to have no issue secretly teaching girls that they can be boys because they feel uncomfortable in their bodies. A grown adult woman can't get a hysterectomy without extensive medical forms and doctor's visits. But Dr. Saphir over the hill in Sherman Oaks is willing to do top and bottom surgery, sterilizing children for life. Parents must be a part of the education process when teaching sexuality to students, and it definitely doesn't need to happen under the age of 10 years old.
Slay. That was great. He walked away knowing that he had killed that, by the way. I mentioned yesterday that Gays Against Groomer has been banned from Venmo and PayPal, and they went on Tucker Carlson's show to talk about it. And they also, according to them, Google had got rid of their account too. And I'm just like, that's extreme when Google's like kicking you off and saying you can't have email anymore. I don't know if they got reversed or whatever, or how much they're fighting it, but I think it's pretty reasonable that you just leave the kids alone. You just leave the kids alone. But we know that that their goal is to not leave the kids alone. And Peppa Pig, we talked about this when it was announced, but Peppa Pig now that's a TV show. It's a British TV show, but a lot of kids over here watch it in the US. They have a panda family of lesbians, 2 moms or something, on the show, kids show. And so there was a big petition to get them to put some LGBT representation on it. And in the petition, it says that they want them to do it because the kids are impressionable. So I'm like, oh, you gave away the whole plot, you want to put it in there because not because they can understand, not because they get it, not because they're smarter than parents give them credit for, etc. They want them to have this stuff in there because they are impressionable. That's what it's about. Trying to shape their minds to their ideology. So, just so you know what's going on, FYI, this is kind of breaking. Matt Gaetz, who is not a sex trafficker, will not. Prosecutors are recommending against bringing charges against Matt Gaetz for sex trafficking. New Washington Post and other people are reporting it. I'm reading from T Post Millennial. Matt's a nice guy. I met him in person. Career prosecutors have recommended against charging Rep. Matt Gaetz following a sex trafficking investigation, reports the Washington Post. Prosecutors told the Justice Department superiors that a conviction is unlikely due to a lack of credibility with the two central witnesses. A source familiar with the matter said, while a final decision has not been made as of yet, it is rare such advice to be rejected. According to the source who spoke to the condition of the anonymity, they said that charges could still take place if additional evidence emerges. The Post reports that it is unlikely that authorities would charge Gaetz with a crime investigation into allegations that Gaetz was sexually involved with a 17-year-old girl kicked off in 2020. The Florida representative has denied any wrongdoing and has said he has never paid for sex and has only ever had sex with a 17-year-old when he was also 17. Gaetz' lawyer declined comment to the Post. A Justice Department spokesperson also declined to comment. Allegations against Gaetz claimed that he had paid for sex in violation of federal sex trafficking laws. A federal grand jury in Orlando this year heard testimony from Gaetz as well as an ex-girlfriend. The ex-girlfriend was one of the women who Gaetz allegedly took to the Bahamas in 2018. The 17-year-old was also on that alleged trip, though she would have been 18 by the time, a report said. The source said, however, that testimony from them would not pass the muster with a jury. Another witness was a former friend of Gaetz, Joel Greenberg, a former tax collector who pleaded guilty last year to sex trafficking of a minor and other crimes. Greenberg, who was charged in 2020 with fabricating allegations of evidence, and prosecutors tacked on additional charges. As more came to light, Greenberg would ultimately plead guilty to 6 charges, including sex trafficking of a child. Prosecutors would dismiss other 27 charges against him as part of a plea deal. If Greenberg were to provide substantial assistance in providing another case, a judge could give him a lesser sentence. Investigators discovered that Greenberg could provide evidence potentially implicating Gaetz in sex trafficking. The Post writes that prosecutors had been exploring whether Greenberg paid women to have sex with Gaetz and whether the two shared sexual partners, including the 17-year-old girl at issue in Greenberg's case, these people said. So they're saying they don't have the evidence for what they were alleging, which when the story broke, and he really came out and said it's false. These allegations are false. And then didn't anything else come out of it. So I'm just like, if this was even a whiff of real, he wouldn't be able to operate in the sphere that he's operating in. Being so vocal in the Republican sphere, there'd be stories nonstop. I'm like, they don't treat Democrats the same way that they treat Republicans, especially a very vocal Republican. And by the way, there's establishment Republicans who don't like Gaetz. So if this was even a little bit true, if there was the evidence for this, I'm like, he'd already be done. He'd already be done. As a matter of fact, one of Mike Pence's boys came out maybe some time ago. I don't know if it was a full year ago, but there's video of him like on, I guess it was CNN, saying they were talking about who's going to run for president, or something like that. He's like, well, I know Matt Gaetz isn't going to run for president because he's going to be arrested for sex trafficking, and said all that stuff, and it just wasn't true. So if they could have taken him out, Democrats would have taken him out. Republicans who don't like him would have taken him out. And so I'm like, the story, there's got to be no there. So I didn't really comment on it too much because I'm like, it doesn't, like, if he did something terrible and he needed to go to jail, yeah, sure, throw him away, throw away the key, lock him up, etc. but there didn't seem to be evidence for that. And if there was a whiff of evidence for that, I could be wrong, but I'm not usually wrong in cases like this. I think he would have utterly been destroyed. Utterly been destroyed. So I'm like, I don't think this is a real story. Then there are bits and pieces that, kind of eked out to make him look bad or whatever, but the prosecutors are saying there's no sort of evidence there. And he's been going on with his life. Obviously, that's stained his reputation, not as much as like some other allegations, et cetera, have. But I think because most people know that it's ridiculous. However, I know from being on TikTok and other places, when people mention Matt Gaetz, I'm talking about like leftists and stuff, they bring this up. It's not true, but they bring this up. We're like, he goes to sex trafficking Matt Gaetz. It's not true. Hasn't been any evidence. But that's what they want to go with. And by the way, just because they're saying that they're not going to recommend any charges and there's not going to be any evidence to criminally charge him, I think they're probably still going to say it regardless. I think they're probably still going to go ahead and say it. So they just care about scarring people. They don't care about the truth. But I'm glad for that bit of news. I did get to meet. That wasn't this year. This past September. It is September right now. Right? Yeah, it is September right now. Last September, I went to Mackinac and he was there, and he was a nice guy. We talked a bit. He really likes my videos, and especially that was when I put out the super bass video. If you haven't seen it, you should go back and find that. Yeah, but he totally knew he didn't do anything wrong, and if he really had, he should go to jail. Like for sex trafficking, if that's something he was actually into. But I think we would have known about it. It's like would have been ruined. And I think he probably, to the point where people would have been pressuring him and he would have just had to resign and fight it like that sort of way. But there had to be no there, obviously, because that's how our politics work. If you're on the right, they come guns a-blazing to destroy you. And the fact that they didn't do more, it was hot when it first came out. I still hear like leftist accounts bring it up and stuff, like I said, on TikTok and other places, but like as like serious a bit of journalism, serious bit of journalism, but you guys get what I mean. Like mainstream is not really a big thing. And I'm like, it would be if there was some there, but there's obviously not, and it never really was. Okay, moving on. Last thing I want to talk about today. I want to show you guys this video of this man, black man, talking about, he's outside of a Planned Parenthood talking to protesters. It's about 3 minutes long. And he says something that I think is pretty poignant to where I want to go with this. So bear with me. It's a good 3 minutes anyway.
Your great-grandparents escaped abortion. You escaped abortion. You know that? You wouldn't be able to stand here and run your little entitled mouth if you was aborted. You know that? You wouldn't be able to stand here and breathe if your mother decided to give you the death sentence. So I don't want to hear nothing about abortion, because you know what? You really don't believe it. You don't really believe that you should kill your own baby in the womb of his mother.
I didn't really want to interrupt, but he said you'd be dead if you were aborted, or you wouldn't be here running your mouth. And she's like, I'd be dead. I hate when people say that. It's so dumb to me. We're like, well, if my mother aborted me, I'd just be dead. I wouldn't care. I'm like, if we killed you right now, would you care? If you died right now, you would be sentient. Like that's not a good reason not to kill someone, because like you just be over it because you'd be dead. It's so stupid. Anyway.
You don't believe that. You know what you believe? You believe that you don't want to be called a bigot. You believe that you want to be accepted by your friends. You believe that you want to be popular. You believe that you want to be liked. So you wouldn't dare go against the popular narrative, because you know you might lose your friends, you might lose your job, you might get canceled, you might not be able to make the money you want to make, you might not have the fame you want to have. And so what you do? You pander. and you cater to people who literally want to murder human beings.
So I'm gonna let the rest of the video play out, but that's what I want you to keep in mind. He's like, you guys don't actually believe the things that you're saying, and I think there's truth to that, because if you ask someone who's, woman's choice, etc., you ask them, like, when do you think human beings should get a right to life, and they might say whatever weeks. They might say um at birth. Basically, that's Stacey Abrams, Beto O'Rourke, Joe Biden's position basically now, 9 months. If that's what the woman wants. But if you ask them, and some people will be like, it's not a life, it's not a person. They'll do everything to justify like that choice. But if you ask them, hey, do you think Scott Peterson should have been charged for the murder of his wife and his unborn child? People will say yes. There was a case a couple years ago where a woman told her boyfriend she was pregnant, and she was only 6 weeks, and he tricked her into taking these pills that ended up causing her to, kill the baby. And so he was going to get charged for murder, but he took a plea that for a lower charge. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but people agree, like, yeah, he should be charged. There's a case going on. Ooh, I don't remember exactly where it is, but there's another example where there was a man who killed his wife, and she was pregnant, and they're charging him for thinking about giving him capital punishment, because in the state where it's happened, you can qualify if you do like multiple murders, and so it's two. And in that case, she did have the baby, like it was kind of like an emergency sort of thing. They tried to do like an emergency delivery, but it was too early and the baby died. So it wasn't viable, obviously, or what they would say is viable. But people still believe that all those men in that circumstance should be charged. So people do believe that the unborn are valuable, that they are alive, that even if it is a life with potential, not a potential life, but even if it was just a potential life, they still realize that it has some sort of inherent value, unless the mother doesn't want to have the child. So deep down, these people know that it doesn't make sense, but he makes the point that a lot of you just want to be popular. A lot of you want to go along. You guys don't want to be called a bigot. You guys don't want to be called pro-birther. You don't want to be mean. There's so many people who will say they're pro-life, but they're not pro-life for other people. Like they're pro-choice for other people. Like they wouldn't personally do it, but they think other people should be allowed to do it. Why have laws? You feel that way? Like, I wouldn't personally go and blow your brains out, but I don't think people should be able to do. If you want to do that, you should be able to do. No, we don't operate that way. We have our laws that are meant to protect us from like stealing from each other, violently aggressing against each other to protect our rights. Like, I have property rights. You can't just steal my stuff. I have a right to life. You can't just kill me, right? It's not just a matter of you choose, I choose. We respect each other. Sometimes people don't respect your space. Sometimes people don't respect your rights, and we require laws. So that doesn't make much sense. But some people are just pro-choice because they're socially convinced that being pro-life is mean. So I think he makes a great point there, that there's so many people who just want to be accepted, and it's more like a cult of personality rather than just thinking for yourself, thinking about the issues and saying, you know what? The science is actually this. The numbers are actually like 96% of abortions are actually elective. They're not like only like 0.3% is in cases of rape. And it's very, very low for fetal anomaly, which we can talk about whether you should be able to do that in that cases too. But life of the mother is very rare. Like 96% of abortions, it's some kind of form of birth control. So if you look at that and you look at the embryology and you consider the rights, and you're like, you know what, maybe we should get rid of it. If you could really think about it, and it allow for some exceptions, but not a blanket. Yeah, you do it anytime, anywhere, if you feel like it. But that's not the flow of culture right now. That's not the flow. And then they try to beat you with statistics and facts. Like I was in a comment section the other day reading through comments, and someone told this pro-life person, and they're like, well, how do you feel that so many people disagree with you? And he said, I don't care. And I'm just, bravo. Like, you guys are advocating that people should be able to kill children. I don't care if you don't like my opinion that that's wrong. Like, my job is to convince you otherwise, and I'll continue to do that. But I don't care if my opinion is unpopular. It was unpopular to be against slavery once upon a time ago, and those people had to keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And when people weren't, even people who were against it weren't standing up enough, you had people like Frederick Douglass who had to tell people off during his like 4th of July, speech. They gave on the 5th of July, actually. What is the 4th of July to a slave speech? It's a great speech. And when I read that, I think about abortion. As a matter of fact, I did write an article that compared the two. You should go read it. So I'm going to go ahead and let this video play out, but we already got to the point that I pretty much wanted him to say, but I'm gonna play a little bit more before I go on and move to my point about Chrissy Teigen and Hillary Burton.
How insane is that? How insane is that? That a woman could be walking across the street right now and she's pregnant, right? She could be walking across the street pregnant, and a man come by with his car and kill that woman and her baby. You know what that judge is gonna do? That judge is gonna give that man 2 counts of homicide. 2 counts of vehicular homicide. Not 1, 2. Why would that judge say that that man that hit that pregnant woman and killed her and her baby is guilty of 2 homicides? Why would he say that? The reason he would say that is because not only the woman carrying the baby is a real human being, but the baby she's carrying is a real human being. The same baby that's kicking in her womb, turning around, pushing his little hand against the inside of her stomach. And then when she pokes back, the baby turns. And then it kicks in another place. And then she pokes back and she's having fun with her live baby. Her human being in her womb. It's responding to stimuli. It is a real human being.
Yep.
You cannot claim to be BLM. You cannot claim that Black Lives Matter. You cannot claim that racism is wrong. You cannot claim that any harm against human beings is wrong.
I don't know if you guys could make out the guy with the megaphone who's responding back to him with such a lame talking point. He's like, people who claim to be pro-life wouldn't even wear a mask for 5 minutes. The mask didn't work. And the masks have also caused harm. First of all, it's kind of hard to breathe. I hate it wearing glasses and just having everything fog up and not being able to see. But there's now reports of children who are having trouble with their learning development because they learn to speak by also watching our mouths. And so there have been all these kids that need speech therapy that are behind on their learning. You had like CDC kind of stealth edit their like recommendations for when children should be at certain development speaking ages and stuff. And when kids can't properly communicate, it affects their behavior because they get frustrated. And if they can't properly speak that or understand, that ends up impacting how they learn other subjects besides just like English and stuff, because they need to be able to communicate to learn all this other stuff throughout their education process. So we've done some damage over the muzzle that didn't even do anything. It didn't make sense to you could go to a restaurant, sit down in a booth, and take off your mask. Before your food even gets there, you can take off your mask. But the distance between the door and your seat, it could be like 6 feet, 8 feet, whatever. But that's the danger zone where you had to wear the mask. I thought that was a joke when I first heard that. When I walked to a restaurant and they're like, no, you need to put on your mask. I'm like, and no one else was even in the restaurant. It was just the workers and me and my 2 sisters who were behind me coming in. They're like, please, we just don't want to get shut down again. And so I like put on the mask. I was like in disbelief, looking at them like, you guys know this is dumb, right? And I'm sure they knew it was dumb, but I didn't give a bigger fuss than that because I didn't want them to get shut down either. That's the kind of madness our governor put us through in Michigan, and it'd be so insane if she gets reelected. Ugh. But I'm gonna let this finish up.
Will you accept this? You are a hypocrite. You are completely inconsistent. If you believe that the most vulnerable, the most innocent, the most defenseless people on the planet do not deserve to be protected, you are a complete clown if you believe that. None of y'all can be taken seriously.
None of them can be taken seriously. And I think the man's right. So he said that there's people who just want to be popular. And I think that is true. There's a lot of truth to that because there's so many people sharing, so many celebrities out there who sharing their abortion stories. And one of those people was Hillary Burton. You may recognize her from, I don't have a picture of her show right now, maybe playing back pop over on the screen. Hillary Burton is from the TV show One Tree Hill. That's how I know her. She's been on some other things, but that's where I've seen her. She played Peyton. And she had a miscarriage, and she decided to describe it as an abortion because she had a D&C procedure to remove the fetus. Now, from my understanding, I'll apologize if I'm wrong, but she had a child who passed away, and they did a D&C. Now, just because you have a D&C doesn't mean you had an abortion, because you can do a D&C to treat for like endometriosis. So a D&C is used to scrape the abnormal tissue from a uterine lining. So maybe her paperwork said that was a spontaneous abortion. Again, a miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion. Well, I don't need to do that. Technically, medically, that is what it is. But when people talk about abortion, we're not marching in the streets, traveling. I didn't travel down to DC for the March for Life rally and stuff. And thank you again to the sponsors who helped me get there. To do videos and all the other kind of stuff. I didn't do that to stop women from having miscarriages. I don't know how you would do that. I would like for women to have less miscarriages because it's just tragic. We all know it's a tragedy when they have to go through that. I'm marching because there's like 1 million induced abortions every year, or close to it. That's why people march. That's why we're having all these debates. That's why we're having all these arguments. And like 96% of those are like elective, like used in some kind of form of birth control. And I don't mean like everybody's like, ooh, I made an oopsie and I want to go out and party, though there are women who want abortions for that purpose. I mean, you can have that child. You don't want that child. Therefore, that's why you're having abortion. And it could be more complicated and emotional than that, but you could have the child, you're choosing not to. That's what I mean. And I don't think that's a good enough reason to kill somebody. Mm-mm. So I thought that was weird. There was actually like a pro-life sort of episode or series about in One Tree Hill after like the time jump when they graduated high school. She got pregnant after she finally married Lucas, the main character. She had a complication, and so they were talking about how he wanted to have an abortion, I guess, and she's like, no, this is a baby, this is a life, like, and she's like, how can I, if this baby kills you, how can I love it or something? And she's like, it'll be okay. You know, it was a long time. I saw it live, you know, when it aired, so that's about all I remember about it. I think she ended up getting hit by a car, which a lot of those folks ended up in the hospital in that show. And she and the baby were fine. And how their series ended, or arc ended, because they left the show, but other people continued on without them. They were married and they had the baby and they had their little family and they left them with somewhere. So it's so bizarre that all these people want to get in on that action and empathize with abortion, induced abortions, elective abortions, even though you have these big tragedies. of miscarriages. Like it's not the same. It's obviously ethically not the same. Circumstances aren't the same between like doing something deliberately and not. It's just very strange. And then you have Chrissy Teigen, who had a miscarriage, and she shared it on um, Instagram when it happened, and it was obviously a tragedy. Some people thought it was weird, the photos that she shared, that it were so personal. They're like, who are taking these photos in these intimate, like tragic moments? And so people were commenting that kind of stuff. Though I understood those criticisms, I'm like, she suffered a miscarriage. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything along those lines. I don't know if I'm not gonna say I didn't think it was a little weird. Just because it was so hurtful and intimate. Um, I don't know if they were like, "Can you take this photo?" I don't know. It's a little strange. But I didn't make any comment because and some people are pointing out like because they're so pro-choice and they're like, is it in a life? I didn't want to go that route either because I'm like, they suffered a terrible thing. They suffered a terrible thing. I'm not gonna pile on to them. Now they're retconning this situation, which I'm just gonna read a little bit out a snippet of my book because I did include this. Model, TV host, and social media influencer Chrissy Teigen shared of the loss of her son Jack after suffering a miscarriage of 20 weeks in 2020. Teigen was diagnosed with a partial placenta abruption. She originally wrote on Instagram, "We were never able to stop the bleeding and give our baby the fluids he needed, despite bags and bags of blood transfusions." So if you're giving bags and bags of blood transfusions to try to save your baby, you're obviously not ethically having something similar to what is happening at like 96% rate in the United States. Teigen and her husband, John Legend, even shared the pictures of them crying and holding their child in the bed together after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Teigen revealed at a social impact agency summit that Legend informed her that it was an abortion. Legend and Teigen are retconning the tragedy of a late term miscarriage, and having some kind of issue that late is kind of on the rare side, but obviously super tragic, and inserting themselves in the abortion as abortion heroes for political purposes. There's a lot of groupthink and social pressure to accept abortion and to even push for it. Some abortion activists even conflate the ending of any pregnancy as an abortion, and they'll do anything to ignore the immorality and of deliberately ending the life of a child for no legitimate medical reason. So John Legend made some comments, I think it was on a podcast or something, that seemed really suspect. And I'm like, why is he conflating what happened? But then he went and convinced his wife that, babe, we had an abortion. That is so weird. That is so weird to have this natural tragedy of you trying to save your baby and then wanting to so desperately be a part of the narrative that you convinced your wife that it was an abortion. Now, again, a miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion, but like when people talk about abortion, we're we're marching and trying to get rid of like induced abortions, like and not even to. We want women to be able to save their lives in a medical emergency. Like the 96% of abortions people using as birth control, that's what we want to stop. So it's so weird. But as that man in the video said, people want to be accepted. People want to be liked. People want to be popular. So that's what they push. And they're like, hey, I have my tragic abortion story too. I have this story too. There's reaching and reaching and reaching. But it's so strange. It's so strange. And I don't know, women deserve better than this. I'm so weirded out that her husband convinced her of this. And women just deserve better. Even like Chrissy Teigen, she's gotten some really bad press as of late because she's said some, I don't know, told some kids, I guess, to kill themselves and bullied some people. She is someone who's like married to social media She's also made some really gross pedophile jokes as well. She's a weird person, very problematic. Um, but people who are addicted to social media, it's not so strange that they would share these intimate moments like this. I'm not just saying because people manufacture stuff to put stuff up. Like they're when you're on social media so much, it feels like the people who you share your info with are like part of your life that you'd want to share something like that. And people would ask about it. So why not go ahead and share it? So um I don't begrudge her for sharing this stuff or someone posting stuff like I've heard some other people do, but it is weird. It is weird to retcon it and be like, "Oh, babe, you had an abortion the whole time." Be part of this conversation, and then to go and even when I had a conversation with Haley Stevens at a debate, it was a her versus Andy Levin, and I went out there, and they didn't know I was Republican. I just showed up, and I asked her like, "Okay, you guys were talking about abortion, and but I heard you. They didn't call it abortion; they just call it reproductive freedom, right? They don't even want to have use that word." And I'm like, "But I didn't hear you guys talk about like the child." I'm like, "Do you believe they have any right to life?" And so she didn't want to say, and she kind of skirted around the issue. She's like, "Well, I've known women who've had miscarriages, and I'm very sympathetic and blah blah." And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, "What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything?" Like they really want to conflate it so they can have more because women do share each other's pain. That's one reason why you see like the gender crisis exploding, and Abigail Schreier has touched on that in her book Irreversible Damage. Women share their pain, and that's why there's so many teenage girls who are collectively grouping and deciding that they're boys. It's a social contagion, and we're dealing with a social contagion as far as this goes. And so they women have sympathetic abortion stories. Even people who choose to do it electively, there are sympathetic abortion stories out there. There's some not so sympathetic abortion stories out there, but they want to conflate those with the pain of the miscarriage, and be like, well, that's similar, and have them all come together and share their pain, and have anyone who's like, okay, but what about the baby? And they're like, no, you're the bad guy. Be a part of our group collective. And people are like assimilating like the Borg naturally, and I guess maybe by social pressure and stuff too. And it's so weird. It's really so weird. But I don't know, I'll pray. We gotta keep praying for him or something. It is so bizarre. They're John Legend and Chrissy Teigen are with child again. I wish the best for them, and I hope they have some radical shifts in life for the sake of them and their child, because this is weird. It's just weird. I got nothing else to say. All right, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. Make sure that you guys are sharing, that you guys are dropping emails. Check out different merch that I got, like the Be Better Not Bitter shirt. I mentioned the Frederick Douglass speech. This is a line from it. The Constitution is a glorious liberty document, because some people try to trash the Constitution, and Frederick Douglass thought it was actually a great document itself. So I made sure to make sure to that, because I want people to know that our institutions aren't just terrible, and everything shouldn't be just torn down. I have the "You Are Not That Special," but I also have those in cute little mugs. And we get the Life Wins Roe and Casey aborted shirts you guys can check out at Black Tea News. Again, make sure that you guys are checking out some of my books, some of my merchandise that I have on my site. If you go to blacktnews.com and hit the merchandise button, there is a banner that will take you to my book website. But my book website is ninjadustpublishing.com. That's what it is. Right there. So that's where you can find my books at, and most of them are fiction. I write about mermaids, vampires, and werewolves, and a bunch of other stuff. And I got historical fiction, just a lot of different subjects and things. I think the best way to like kind of describe my work is just I deal with the struggle of humanity and just doing the right thing even against our nature. So some of the stories are darker than others, but ultimately to the goal of a choosing to achieve and be good. So, but the lightest one is obviously the children's book Super Kid, which some people have gotten it for their themselves, for their grandkids, for their kids, and have really really loved it. The story is loosely based off some stories about my dad when he was a little kid, because he would pray to God to get powers, get strong and be Superboy. So since he was stronger than all the kids, he actually thought that God was giving him the miracle and he was turning a Superboy, but he found out that wasn't the case. So anyway, Felix has an overactive imagination. He doesn't really have powers. He thinks he does. So he turns into Super Kid, and so he teams up with his friend Kiara, who's a crush on him, and so she goes along with it because she obviously likes him, and she's way too smart for her own good. So she becomes Princess Lady Diva because she had to be all three, and then she teams up with Elite here, and he thinks it's true, and he asks them to train him, so he becomes Stickman. And so they just go around the community trying to do good. And in the second book, they have to deal with this bully who's way bigger than Felix and stuff. And it's really about the question of what do you do when you have to face an impossible battle. So great stuff in there for kids, and you guys will enjoy it. So go ahead and check out that stuff. And again, if you like what I do here at blackteennews.com, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate. And God bless you guys. And I will see you on Monday with more content, more stories. And I'm definitely going to have some videos I want you guys to share around. So just be out on the lookout. God bless.